What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer now takes us to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where the namesake of the state is up next out of the ACC. A legendary NFL head coach takes the reins of this program, but is it going to turn North Carolina into ACC contenders? My name is Nate Pope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. We'll answer that question in this video, and I want to thank you so much for clicking on this video and helping to support the channel. If you want to support the channel even further, please do what it says right below me. Hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell because turning on notifications will ensure that you don't miss an upload, especially not one for your favorite team or teams. You can root for multiple, that's okay. I'm a sports media grad delving into the professional world of the industry, and if you want to see all the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date what goes on this very YouTube channel, please give me a follow. It's at Tailgate829 on Twitter and Instagram, or you can call Twitter X, whatever your preference, and you can even email me, tailgate829@gmail.com. I want to thank you all so much for supporting and interacting with me or the channel, however you may be doing so, and it's time to dive on in. Let's talk about the North Carolina Tar Heels and a legendary NFL head coach by the name of Bill Belichick. He is going to be taking over this program. He is the new head man. There were a lot of underwhelming results when Mac Brown was the head coach of this program. For the North Carolina Tar Heels, you're going to hope to get to that greatness level that we saw with Bill Belichick in the professional ranks. Can he transition that NFL greatness over into the college game? There's varying different levels of opinion on that, and you're going to find out mine in this video. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we first go through a roster overview, which the offense is to the left, the defense is to the right, and at the end of the video, we'll go through the Tar Heel football schedule. I'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction in this video overall. We'll tell you what I think about the Tar Heels in 2025. Some numbers right below me I want to touch on before we do get started. Returning production numbers are according to ESPN, and they do factor in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage. When you take a look at the recruiting and transfer portal class ranks, those are according to 24/7 Sports for the class of 2025. The transfer portal class for North Carolina ranks ninth in the entire country, meaning Bill Belichick did a lot of work in the portal to overhaul this roster, mainly the defensive end, but we'll touch on that when we get there, where you're going to start, as usual, with the offensive end and your offensive coordinator, Freddie Kitchens. Now, quarterback play wasn't necessarily bad last year, but compared to what we've seen out of Sam Howell and Drake May, it felt underwhelming with this Tar Heel program and what Jacoby Criswell did with this team last year. 2,459 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions on around 58% completion percentage. Well, I think that production is going to get an uptick this season when South Alabama transfer Gio Lopez is going to be coming into this program. 2,559 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions on around 66% completion percentage. The QBR was also a lot higher than what Criswell did last season, but it's also what Gio Lopez can do as a runner that is really, really, really impressive. 465 yards and 7 touchdowns, averaged around 5.6 yards per carry, and yes, sack yardage is included in that number. Gio Lopez is the guy that I'm going to be very interested to see what Freddie Kitchens and Bill Belichick is going to do, because, again, Bill Belichick did work with the North Carolina quarterback in Drake May, but he also, yes, he did work with the North Carolina quarterback, I think for a little bit in Drake May, but he mainly had that pocket presence of of Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady was the guy in the pocket presence, and even Drake May, being that pocket presence type quarterback, can get outside and run there as well. But I'm going to be very interested to see how Bill Belichick and Freddie Kitchens overall is going to utilize what Gio Lopez said. If nothing else makes sense, just know this. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Kitchens and Belichick involves Lopez in this offensive system. Is he a good quarterback? I think so. I think he's really, really good. I can't wait to see what he does at the Power 4 level. Now, the talent surrounding Gio Lopez, you could say that there are going to be some improvements. You could say that there's going to be some steps taken back, and I think you could say each of the things about each of the rooms. When you take a look at the running back room, Omarion Hampton is now in the NFL. There weren't many backs better than him last season. In fact, you could argue there was only one, and it was Ashton Jeanty. Omarion Hampton is fantastic. 1,660 yards and 15 touchdowns last season. Massive loss for this Tar Heel program. Davion uh, Gauze or Gauss, or however you say that last name. Apologies for mispronunciations. And Caleb Hood will both be coming back to this program. Caleb Hood been with this program for a while, so he brings experience. And then Goss with 326 yards and 4 touchdowns last season as the team's second leading rusher. They're going to be your leaders in the backfield. And even though you do lose Hampton, should be a solid 1-2 punch in your running back room. Lead receiver J.J. Jones is now gone and off with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, really good player for North Carolina last season. 582 yards and 6 touchdowns. Was one of the favorite targets for the likes of Jacoby Criswell last season. Your tight end duo, if we skip ahead a little bit, your top two tight ends are going to exit there as well. John Copenhaver also going off with J.J. Jones over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then Bryson Nesbitt is now with the Minnesota Vikings. So you're going to get some new tight ends. Jake Johnson and the transfer and Connor Cox are going to be that tight end duo. But back to the wide receiver room, Kobe Paysour is a really interesting name to watch. To me, he can be one of the most dynamic wide receivers in the ACC. There's a problem with that. He's had some injury issues, especially last season. If he can stay healthy, he's going to stay well within this wide receiver mix. In fact, if he stays healthy and is rearing and ready to go, I think he's the most talented guy in this wide receiver room. And I think he leads the team in receiving here in 2025. Again, as long as he can get that playing time and stay on the field. A lot of other returners and transfers surrounding this wide receiver room. Jordan Shipp is a true sophomore coming back. Lots of good pieces in the two deep. A transfer, and Isaiah Johnson is probably going to be stepping into a starting role right away as a transfer over from Michigan State. 276 yards and a pair of touchdowns for him with the green and white. So again, running back room, probably going to take a step back. Tight end room, probably going to take a little bit of a step back. Wide receiver room, hopefully, should take a nice step forward, as should the quarterback play. And then you talk about the offensive line. 3 starting offensive line roles are going to need to get filled, but there are plenty of transfers to come in with few returners vying for the spots. Now, the left side of the offensive line could very much so see a bunch of returners coming in to fill in those spots. But there are a ton of transfer portal pieces coming in, most notably on the right side of the offensive line, projected to start Daniel King and William Boone at guard and tackle, respectively. Ton of transfers, ton of freshman players that are looking to slide into that 2 deep in the offensive line. It's a very much so portal overhauled room. It is the most portal overhauled room on the offensive side. You could say the quarterback position, but whatever, right? The offensive line, as far as an entire unit, is the most overhauled offensive position. It was a North Carolina offensive line last season, I believe, that allowed 33 sacks. Had my number a little off. 33 sacks last season. We'll see if that gets better here in 2025 with all the transfers they have coming in. Defensively, though, let's start talking about it. Steve Belichick is going to be your defensive coordinator this season, and the Belichick family is very much so expected to massively improve this Tar Heels unit. That's what they're known for, right? They love their defense. It's a North Carolina defense that, again, even over the times of Drake May and Sam Howell, had struggling defensive units. Had some really, really good players, but some struggling defensive units overall as a whole. It should get better with the Belichick family. Year 1, it might not improve right away, but I think you're going to see at least some of the little things get a whole lot better with this football program, especially on the defensive side. And the defense is going to see a ton more overturn than the offense. Plenty of units. In fact, every single unit we're going to be talking about today, that's the defensive front, the linebackers, and the defensive backfield in the secondary, are going to be overhauled. Plenty of portal pieces come in, plenty of portal pieces leave. So you're really getting overhauled by the transfer portal, no matter how you slice it on this defense. Special teams, however, is one that, well, honestly, special teams sees an overhaul too. You're going to have a ton of transfers coming in that realm. But when you talk about the defensive front, let's start out with that front 7, your defensive front and your linebackers. They lose 30 sacks of production, and some absolutely massive names leave this defensive side. Second leading tackler, Amari Campbell, 6.5 sacks. Yep, he is gone. You're also going to be losing a really good linebacker by the name of Power Eccles. He is with the Chicago Bears, by the way. Amari Campbell, I don't believe, on this team anymore. No, he's not. He's transferred on over to Penn State. Really big pickup for that linebacking unit over there. So some other sack production leaders. A guy by the name of Javari Ritzy. He's over at Belichick's old stomping grounds with the New England Patriots. You're also going to be losing Desmond Evans, 5 sacks for him. Bo Atkinson, a guy that led your team in sacks last year, he transferred out to Ohio State. Kamon Rucker, he's in the NFL now, and I could be listing a ton more names. Those are all defensive front and linebacking players that are all gone out of this defensive front seven. There are a few returners to get excited about coming back. Peter Pasansky is a redshirt freshman. Leroy Jackson is a redshirt freshman. But really, it's transfers, and it's one freshman here by the name of Devin Ancrum that is in this two deep that should make a pretty big impact on the interior of that defensive front. But defensively, Smith Vilbert, CJ Mims, those are two guys coming in to play defensive front for you at the rush position, combination defensive lineman and linebacker, kind of like an edge rusher. Price Yates is going to be coming in. Makai Bayer is going to be coming over here as well. He's a Nebraska transfer, played good football for the Huskers last season. Kamori House is another linebacker transfer coming in. And just, again, behind it all is a very, very young unit. So defensive front, again, a massive overhaul. Transfers are going to slot in pretty much everywhere. It's going to be a really interesting defensive front unit to watch, but it doesn't stop there, right? The secondary is going to get some more transfers in. However, the secondary is the place where if you want to look for returners, you get some really good players back. Caleb Koss, Marcus Allen, and Will Hardy are all returning members of the secondary that provided really good production last season. They are really experienced pieces of this defense. They are all coming back. Gavin Gibson, Thaddeus Dixon, and Coleman Bryson are some other transfers that come in with a lot of sophomores, redshirt sophomores, even some freshmen that are back waiting in the defensive backfield. So overall, when you talk about this defensive side, you're just losing a ton of talent. Your secondary, hey, it's got some pretty good pieces coming back here, but portal pieces are going to slot in everywhere. And the depth is really, really young, which defensively means it's going to be challenged. There are going to be some pretty good offenses in the ACC this year. SMU could be good. Clemson could be good. Miami has that potential, and a ton of other teams in there as well. This is a defense in North Carolina that I'm honestly really excited to see how it develops. Again, I think the Belichick family is going to do a good job of being able to develop the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, I'm really curious to see how Gio Lopez fits into this system. But how does North Carolina perform overall in their first year under Bill Belichick? Well, let's go ahead and find out right now, because here is the North Carolina 2025 football schedule. But before we dive on into this, some numbers from FanDuel that I do want to talk to all of you fine people about. No, I'm not telling you to go place your money. That'd be very irresponsible of me. And you please go do what you want with your money. But it just is some nice context to give. Again, it is some nice context to see how the odds makers feel North Carolina is going to do in the upcoming college football season. Well, plus 4,200 odds to win the ACC. Pretty long odds. They're in the bottom half of that conference in terms of odds to win the conference. And then the highest odds that you can get to win the national championship, plus 100,000. That's what a lot of group of 5 teams have here. It means a ton has to go right for North Carolina to win the national championship. And I would agree with that. Breaking in a new head coach, a ton of new talent, and a schedule that's going to be, I think, pretty tricky to navigate. And it starts out with this game right here against TCU. It's a Monday game, but North Carolina gets this one at home. And having this TCU team that I feel can be really dangerous this year with North Carolina, I think is going to be must-see TV. I think TCU wins this game. I think Josh Hoover and this wide receiver room are going to be absolutely fantastic this season. And the defense has a ton of experience all over the field. Guys that played really good football for TCU last season, while North Carolina is breaking in a bunch of new pieces. I think North Carolina can keep this one pretty close. And again, it's going to be really interesting to see what sort of system that Bill Belichick uses. Does he use that professional system that he did at New England? Does he switch tactics and things now trying to adapt to the collegiate game? I just think this is going to be a fascinating game to watch, to see how both of these teams look and to see how both these teams are going to play this the rest of this season. I do think TCU, though, got a little bit more figured out with Josh Hoover coming back, added some nice portal pieces in the wide receiver room. Defense returns a ton of experience. I do think TCU is going to wind up winning that one, and North Carolina will lose their first game of the 2025 season. However, they win their next two. Charlotte, just not a big believer in Biff Poggi right now. And even though that is a road game, North Carolina should have no trouble with Charlotte there on the road. And I think they should be able to beat Richmond too. Now, Richmond is a team that always hangs around the FCS playoff conversation. Could they give North Carolina some headaches, especially if there are just a crap ton of growing pains? Yeah, but I do think North Carolina is going to win that one. And then this is a really interesting one at home against Central Florida, UCF. This one is really, really fascinating. I'm pretty confident that TCU is going to win that one. Here, I really have no idea who is going to win this game. UCF is bringing in portal pieces from everywhere. Taven Jackson's going to come in to play quarterback. The wide receiver room is completely overhauled. So is the offensive line. You got Jaden Nixon transferring into play running back with some solid returning pieces. The defensive side gets portal pieces everywhere. And it's a guy in Scott Frost coming back to this program that has won before, but he's really got to pick this program up from a place that, well, I just don't think it was left in that great of hands when Gus Malzahn left to go be the offensive coordinator over at Florida State. I think this Central Florida team, though, is going to be pretty competitive this year. I do see the Knights pulling out a win or two this season, on top of the fact now that North Carolina's got to go on the road and play them in the bounce house. I think North Carolina at the end of the year could prove very much so to have more talent than Central Florida, but I do see Central Florida getting this one done. There are going to be growing pains for both teams in this game as they still try to adapt to new coaching regimens, even though UCF has seen this before. This talent hasn't, and totally different thing, totally different story here for North Carolina when you're trying to have someone from the professional realm that's never really coached that much in college, if at all, I don't think, is coming over here and trying to adapt to the college game. I'll side with the home team on this one that I think is a coin flip contest. Central Florida beats North Carolina, UCF over UNC. Then you get into this one against Clemson. And look, if North Carolina is starting off this season 4-0 and they get their bye week and then they get a Clemson team at home, ooh, this right here, Bill Belichick against Dabo Swinney, might be one of the sneakier games to watch in the ACC this season. I think it could be a really fascinating game. I think there are ways in which North Carolina can give Clemson some fits, but I think this Tiger team overall is just way too talented. Cade Klubnik is a phenomenal quarterback that I have going to New York as a Heisman finalist this year. You pair him with Garrett Riley in year 3. Ooh, monster stuff is going to happen with one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country, really good running back unit, and a Clemson defense that if you out there feel like it lost its edge, it's got all the talent in the world, and Tom Allen is that defensive coordinator now. I just think Clemson is way too talented for this North Carolina team. I think, again, there are ways that North Carolina can make this thing a battle. But to me, there are too many variables, and I think Clemson walks out there with a win. Cal is going to take a step back this year. Fernando Mendoza is gone. A lot of pieces on that Cal team that would have made for an exciting season this year are gone surrounding Fernando Mendoza. A lot of really good defensive pieces that have either hit the NFL or the portal. Cal's going to be a team that, again, first year in the ACC, really, really successful one. And it was all hinged on Fernando Mendoza. I just don't really think Cal's going to be as competitive as they were last season. And I do think North Carolina, again, needing a win here to be able to pick themselves up, get some momentum going, will win this one on the road against the California Golden Bears. So you're into the second half of the season now. You've already gone through your 2 bye weeks, but you get Virginia coming up next. It really does feel like this is a Virginia program that should see a jump any minute now. Do I see it being this year? Not necessarily. Look, Chandler Morris is coming into play quarterback. I really like him, but I got a lot of questions about the talent surrounding, some questions about, some of the transfers and stuff they brought in defensively. Although defense, I think this is where Virginia can get North Carolina in this game. Ton of good transfers coming in, ton of experience coming back. I think it's going to be a pretty solid unit that overall I just see struggling this year as a team. And again, at North Carolina, I think by this point we'll start to build some momentum, figure some things out. They win that one against Virginia. Growing pains for Syracuse are going to happen this year. Everybody pretty much everybody. Syracuse, one of the worst teams in Power 4 in terms of returning production. Pretty much everybody that had a major impact with that Orange team last year is gone and off. The quarterback, running back, wide receivers, really good defensive pieces. There's just a ton of talent that Fran Brown is going to need to replace at Syracuse. But I'm a big fan of Fran Brown. I love what he did with the Syracuse team last year. And even though there are going to be a lot of growing pains and not really a whole lot of transfer portal pieces coming in to help you out with that, I still do think that Fran Brown's going to be able to pull out some good wins this year. And I do think Syracuse gets this one. Not to mention, it's a short week. And then you're going on the road to play in the Carrier Dome, a place that I think is a little bit tougher to play than people give it credit for, especially it being a dome. That sound all just funnels down. So on the last day of October, also spooky things happen on Halloween. Syracuse wins this one, and North Carolina falls back to 500. But I do think they win their next two to clinch bowl eligibility. I just don't see Stanford being that competitive this year. Maybe they can be sneaky competitive. They were throughout a lot of points last year. I just don't see it throughout an entirety of the season. Same thing with Wake Forest. Maybe they can be sneaky competitive. Maybe they can get the jump on an in-state team here in North Carolina. But in Winston-Salem, I think the Tar Heels get that one done. So you've clinched bowl eligibility in your first year under Bill Belichick. And I think that's as far as you go. I do think that you lose to Duke. Darian Mensah is transferring in to play quarterback, and he was really, really good during his tenure with the Tulane Green Wave. You're going to have Jaquez Moore coming back from injury out of the running back room. Some really good wide receiver transfers like Andrew Anthony and Cooper Barkate are going to be coming in here to this team. Really good defensive pieces. I love a lot of the defensive pieces that Manny Diaz has with that program. And Duke is one of those teams in the ACC this year that don't count them out. I don't think Duke is going to take a very big step back at all. Maybe a little bit record-wise, but that's because I think the schedule gets a little bit more rigorous for Duke. This one is a game, though, I think Duke more talented than North Carolina, and I think they're overall just a better team. I do think that Duke will win that game, and the rivalry game will get North Carolina this year. NC State could also, at this point in the season, be a team teetering on bowl eligibility. If they want to get there, they got to win this game, and I think they do. NC State's going to have C.J. Bailey, a true sophomore quarterback for him this year. I do like a lot of the pieces in the wide receiver room, even though you do lose Casey Concepcion. Running back room, I think, is solid. Defensively, a ton of experience, and Dave Doran's group usually have some pretty good defenses. So overall, that is a loss right there for me, for the North Carolina Tar Heels, leading my record of North Carolina to 6-6. Overall, you take a look at my record range down there, it is on the low end of what I think North Carolina is capable of this season. I think if everything clicks, you have a mastermind at the head coaching position. If it translates over on into the collegiate realm like that, North Carolina is going to be great. In fact, they may be an ACC championship game contender this season. However, I do think there are going to be some growing pains, not only with the coaching staff, but with this roster as well. I think there's going to be, to me, there's just a lot that has to go right. And it makes me a little nervous when, look, I like a lot of the talent that North Carolina has got. But to me, there are going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some things that have to change with both this roster and this coaching staff, or not necessarily change, but they're just going to have to adapt to within this collegiate landscape. We'll see how it goes right now. Maybe a little disappointing for Tar Heel fans, but I do think the future looks bright, especially if Belichick is here for the long term. Well, that's going to do my video here on North Carolina. Please do anything you can to help support and interact with the channel. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys tomorrow with some more prediction videos. Goodbye.